So today we're going to talk about marketing. Now, first of all, I will admit that I'm not a marketing guy, but what I'm going to do is share with you some of the things that I've learned in being in practice for over 30 years and the things that seems to have worked for me and possibly a few failures as well. So first of all, I want to talk about how to develop that marketing plan or the marketing strategy. So one of the first things I think is important, and I tend to recommend whenever I speak to practitioners about developing a marketing plan, is that they first do an evaluation of who they are so that the message is clear, because people need to know who you are before you talk about what services you offer. So some of the things you need to be very clear upon yourself before you start putting your marketing plan in place is what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the things that you want people to know about you, but almost more importantly, what are your core values? And I remember David Cuttle once said, people don't care what you know until they know how much you care. And I think that kind of boils down to what your core values are. So with that said, I tend to recommend that before you start putting all your marketing plan, website, all that together, try to be very clear as to why you do what you do. And I strongly recommend on that point that you might want to take a look at Simon Sinek's book, and he's got a few videos on that as to why. And so the whole premise to find out why you do what you do and try to make that fairly evident in everything you do as it relates to your marketing. And if you're new to this channel, I would really invite you to subscribe to our channel. So now that you've determined who you are and made that very clear, at least for yourself,
I'm Batman.
Then the next thing you need to determine is who's your target market. So target market, in my opinion, is kind of divided up into two categories, is that who you are targeting and what services will you be targeting by way of offering. So for example, you might say, well, I'm going to target things like farmers, restaurants, manufacturers, those kind of businesses. So those are all categories of industries, of businesses that you may wish to target. But you may also decide to target a particular service. So for example, for us here at Talbot & Associates, one of the services that we target very big are income taxes. So a lot of our promotion relates to providing income tax services. And so you need to maybe now combine both. So because, as again, at Talbot & Associates, we tend to make farmers one of our top priorities as to one of the niches we offer, and given that taxes is also one, so obviously we are going to promote the fact that we do taxes for farmers. So when you marry the two together, you can have a message that's fairly clear and concise in your marketing plan. The other thing that's important is that you target your market fairly narrowly and fairly concisely. So I remember one time, several years ago, I was talking to a marketing agent, and he was saying one of the problems that a lot of people have when they do marketing is they threw too many things at the target people at the same time. So, and the example he gave is that if you throw me 10 balls, odds are good that I won't catch any of them. But if you only throw me one ball, the odds are excellent that I will catch it.
Sorry about that, dude.
So sometimes you got to be careful not to throw too much into your advertising message and really be a little bit more concise as to what you're trying to say and the target you're really trying to hit. So along those same lines, someone once told me, if you talk to everyone, you talk to no one. So try to limit to the people you're talking to. So when I hear people, well, who's your target market? And they say, well, anyone between 15 and 85 years old. Well, you may want to try and narrow that down. Now, I have to admit that even us with income taxes, we figured, well, everybody between 20 and 75 need to get, or 100 need to get their taxes done. But you want to maybe focus some of your marketing at least to a more particular target. So again, in our firm, we were big into marketing farmers, construction people, and then nonprofit organizations, because those were probably the things we found ourselves able to thrive a little bit more in. It's also important to recognize that you will not speak to a farmer in the same way you would to a daycare manager. So the message has to be delivered differently, because if the reader or the person listening and taking part of your advertising message doesn't feel as if they're talking to them, then they will just shut you down. So you have to make sure that your message really hits a point with them and they feel as if you're talking to them. One of the things that I also recommend is that you have your marketing plan down in writing. And oftentimes I will make presentations to a whole bunch of business owners, be it accountants and bookkeepers or even any kind of business. And I ask them, well, how many of you here have a marketing plan in writing? And almost always no hands will go up. And then if I ask, how many of you have a marketing plan at all? Then a few hands will go up. So the difference between having no marketing plan, a marketing plan but not in writing, and having one in writing is actually quite significant. Do you have a marketing plan or not? Please tell us in the comments. The reason it's so important to have something down in writing is that usually, as a general rule, if you put something down in writing, even if it's only for your own eyes, it will carry a lot more weight. And the likelihood of you implementing and pulling through on something you've actually down in writing increases a lot. And the other beauty of putting it down in writing, it forces you to maybe be a little bit more precise of what exactly you're going to do. So what I tend to recommend when I help people with their written marketing plan, I say, well, what exactly do you want to do? And of course, then I'll go back. What is the message you're trying to transmit? So what are you trying to say and how are you trying to say it and all of that? And once you've determined what your market is and who is the people you want to try and hit, and you've determined how, then you got to work on the message. So all of that, I think, is important you put down in writing, because putting down in writing forces you to answer all of these questions clearly before you spend money on putting anything in action. The other thing you should have in your marketing plan, other than who's your target market, what you're going to do, and how you're going to deliver it, is when are you going to deliver it? Because a lot of people say, I've got all these things we're going to do, and I ask them, when are you going to do it? They say, I don't know yet. Well, decide. Make up your mind. This is what we're going to do in March. This is what we're going to do in April. We're going to take a month off, whatever. But put all of that information in writing. And while you're at it, you might as well research what is the cost of each one of those things. Because you may find that you have this plan of doing this television ad in May, and you've got that in your plan. And then you go to research about putting a television ad, and you realize it's $5,000 for 30 seconds. And you may say, okay, I'll pass on that plan. So while you're at it, you might as well do your research early on as to what you're going to do and find out what the cost is for each option. And the other thing that's really important, this is where I think a lot of people miss the boat. And especially, let's face it, accountants and bookkeepers, we are horrible marketing people. And so what a lot of people will do is they'll spend a lot of time talking about themselves. They'll put things in their ad as to the number of years of experience they have, how smart they are, and so on and so forth. What you got to remember is that the person listening to the ad of yours really doesn't care how bright and smart and all that you are. What they really want to know is, what the heck are you going to do for them? So what you need to be very clear in your message is, how good are they going to be by hiring you as their accountant? So things that I like to put in my ads is things like, are you tired of paying too much taxes? Because then people will read that and say, yeah, that's me. And put all questions in there that will get them to identify themselves in the ad. So what you want is for them, when they see your advertisement, they go, hey, that's me. And they keep going, hey, they're talking about me. And if they get them to feel as if, boy, this message is really directed to them, the odds that they will then be called to action increases in a big, big way. The other thing is, if you're going to have a marketing plan, also try to concentrate on things where you can actually measure the effectiveness of it. So one of the things that we do here at our firm is, whenever we pick up a new client, we tend to always ask the question, well, why did you come here? And that will usually be, because I heard this, that, and whatever. Now, that is extremely valuable information for two purposes. One is you know now these are the things you got to keep doing because the reason they made their way to your office is because of those things they've just told you. The other thing that's really nice about that, it tells you what other people are saying about you that's attractive. So again, puts emphasis on the things you got to keep doing. But in there, what you're also trying to find out is to what extent are they picking up on information that's out there. So I usually try to dig out of them, and I don't usually ask the question, have you seen this ad or whatever? I'm just trying to dig out was there other things that influenced them to come and see me as an accounting firm? And oftentimes they'll say, well, I was referred by so-and-so for these reasons, but I also saw your ad in whatever, or I saw an article or whatever. So that is great information as to what works and what doesn't. One of the better strategies that I found in marketing, and you got to remember, marketing is not only about putting the word out in paper and all of that. To me, marketing is anything that you do that will draw people to your business. And one of the things that I found to be extremely effective are presentations. If you can get in front of people and make seminars, that probably for our firm has been one of the bigger draws from unknown people. So in other words, if I were to really nail it down to where do we get the bulk of our clients, I'd say probably 80% of it comes from word of mouth, from clients that we already do, that were impressed with our services and have told their friends. Now, the other way to get the other 20%, one of the ways is to do presentations and take every opportunity you can to make presentations in front of as many people as you can. Because presentations will do a few things. One is just get exposure. Number two, it gives you tremendous credibility. Because usually if you're in front of a crowd of people speaking on a particular subject, right away you've got tremendous credibility of being a person of knowledge in that area. And especially if you're lucky enough, there are questions at the end and you're able to really respond nicely to all of the questions, now your credibility has gone through the roof because most attendees will say, boy, that person really knows his stuff because he was talking with confidence, he wasn't hesitating, and at the end, when the question came about, he really took care of those questions nicely. The other thing is while you're at it, especially if you're making presentations and you're out in public, work on your sales pitch. And 9 times out of 10, I meet another accountant and I'll ask him, so what do you do for a living? And they're gonna say, I'm an accountant, I'm a bookkeeper, I'm a tax preparer. And that's our go-to. We tend to just talk about what is the designation that we have. But let's face it, very few people get terribly excited about, I'm an accountant. So what I tend to do, my sales pitch, I tend to try to change it dependent on who I'm talking to. So if I'm going to a function and I'm meeting a stranger for the first time, before I divulge what I do for a living, I will find out as much as I can about the person that I'm talking to. So for example, I will usually try to initiate the questions, what do you do for a living? And they may say, well, I'm a mechanic and I own my own garage. Oh, so what's that like? Is that a good living? Are you making money? And what are your challenges in that business? Surprisingly, most businesses are really open to talking about themselves and about their business. And they usually like to gripe. So they're going to talk and bitch about what the government is doing and so on and so forth. Now that is excellent information. So what I then do is pay close attention to what their pains are. And they'll often say, well, one of my greatest pains is cash flow. I keep having to fight with the bank and things like that. Now eventually the conversation will usually turn around. They're going to ask, well, what do you do for a living? When they ask me what I do for a living, then my response will depend on what they've told me. So if that person just told me that they're having cash flow problems, I say, I make a living at helping people who have cash flow problems. Now right away they're going to go, okay, now I want to talk to you because I just finished talking about the fact that I had cash flow problems. So this is an opportunity now for you to sell how you can help them with their cash flow problems. And notice that you're probably going to have better communication and better buy-in if you're selling exactly what they're looking for. So your sales pitch, rather than saying I'm an accountant, I will usually say I'm a person who helps people save taxes, or better yet, I will say something a little bit more osé, such as, I help people prevent the government from putting their greedy hands into your pocket and taking the money out of there. So that kind of gets their attention and want to have them talk to you. So those are kind of things you want to work on, that sales pitch of yours, so when you talk to strangers, you get something that comes up that's a little bit more interesting than I'm a bookkeeper or I'm an accountant. Say something like, I help people relieve stress, or I help people maintain wealth, or create and maintain wealth, something like that. Another question that I get fairly often when talking about marketing is, how much money should I spend in marketing? And I know there's tons of formulas out there, and one of the formulas I hear quite often, well, you should be spending about 3% of your sales. I'm not terribly fond of that formula. To say that if my sales are, say, $100,000, then I'm going to spend $3,000 in marketing. Based on what? Because my sales are $100,000? What I do instead is I look at marketing as just like the purchase of an equipment. So you're never going to hear a person say, well, I'm going to spend 5% of my gross sales on tractors. Well, no, you're going to buy a tractor as it suits your needs and depending on how it'll do and so on and so forth. So by the same thing, I think when you do a marketing campaign, you got to think the same way. But it's a good idea to have a formula with which to work to determine how much money you're willing to spend on a particular campaign. So for example, I've been approached to sponsor a certain event and the cost is $3,000. What's going to be going through my mind is, if I spend the $3,000, how much revenues can I expect to gain annually from that $3,000 sponsorship? And my formula tends to be about dollar for dollar. And the reason I came up with the dollar for dollar formula is because a really good practice will usually sell at about a dollar for dollar. So just to give you an idea, and we're going to talk about more about buying and selling a practice, but if you find a practice that is extremely profitable and effective and efficient, you're probably going to find that you're going to pay about dollar for dollar for the gross revenue. So a $100,000 practice will cost you $100,000. And this is what I'd be willing to pay for a practice that is extremely profitable. So using that formula, I can say, well, I'm okay with spending $1,000 for a $1,000 client. So by the same token, when I do my marketing, I think the same way. So if somebody says, do you want to spend $3,000 on this particular campaign, what I'm going to think about is $3,000 for a particular campaign. I need to get out of that a $3,000 corporate client. And if I can get one corporate client that will probably yield me the $3,000, then I will probably spend the $3,000. But if I think that I'm going to spend the $3,000 and the chances are not great of me getting $3,000 worth of business, then I tend not to do it. Is it always a good call? No. Of course, we spend tons of money sponsoring things, doing things, only to find out that it brought us zero revenue. So now I know that we're not going to sponsor that event again next year because we got nothing out of it. But you also have to be a little bit careful, because sometimes the benefits of that campaign can come quite a bit later. And to give you an example of that, I spoke a little bit sooner about speaking engagements. So many years ago, I did a tour around Manitoba where I would talk about farm programs. Now that whole tour, because we were on the road, we had to reserve the locations and even hotel rooms, if I remember correctly, cost me several $1,000s. And I had done the math, and I think if my memory serves me right, it had cost me about $6,000 or $7,000 in all. So what I did is I told myself, we're going to do this round, it's going to cost me $7,000 plus my time, so really we're looking at about $10,000, $12,000. So in order for me to recuperate $12,000, I need to pick up, and we're marketing farmers, which is about $3,000, I need to pick up 4 clients in my tour. And I figured odds are pretty good, I'm going to pick up 4 farming clients out of this tour. And as luck ran out, it turned out way more than that. I picked up way more than 4 clients. But what was really weird is how years later, they keep trickling in. And every year it seems like I had a person who came in. And just last year, I had a new client come in, was a farmer. And I asked him, well, where did you get her name from? He says, well, you made a presentation in our town a few years ago. And I'm thinking, damn, I haven't made a presentation in that town in 10 years. And the farmer says, yeah, that's about right, 10 years ago. He says, it took you 10 years to get here?
Whoa! What did I miss? What did I miss?
But it just goes to show you that these presentations sometimes can yield results much later. It's really weird. So you got to remember that the results of those things that you might be doing today, you might not get the results right away. So it makes it difficult sometimes to measure the effectiveness of your marketing. But you got to do the best you can. So if you do a sponsorship and you get nothing out of it, then I would probably refrain from doing it again until maybe if later on then I see, ooh, that thing we did 3 years ago, we did get something out of it. Then I may reconsider and do it. But again, my formula is dollar for dollar, and I try to guess what I'm going to get out of that campaign, and that helps me decide how much I want to spend on a particular campaign for marketing. So I've got quite a bit more information I can share with you, a whole bunch of different strategies that we've tried over the years, and it's a lot of small things that actually really helps generate more clients for you. So if you would like to get more on marketing, there's a couple of things I would like you to do. First, mark like at the bottom. And number 2, subscribe. And number 3, don't be afraid of sharing this with friends and other people that you think may find it valuable. And by all means, leave your comments of what maybe you would like me to talk more about. But like I said, I've got more information to come, so stay tuned. We're going to have several possibly other presentations on marketing, on how to bring more clients to your practice.